two timeless truths at the start of every new year. Human beings want to lose weight and save money. And human beings are easily convinced that the world around us is getting more and more urgent, more and more difficult. There's an increasing urgency from the outside. Divisive politics, international conflict, rising costs, changes through artificial intelligence we can't fully anticipate or understand. And sometimes all of that outside can feel not entirely dissimilar to an increasing sense of urgency on the inside, where we can tell ourselves that dadgummit, this year is going to be different. I joked in the, I did not come prepared with a word for the year this morning either. So I was a hypocrite taking place, church is a good place for confession. I was a hypocrite taking place in that process. I did joke that my word for the year is stop asking me questions. Stop asking me questions between Christmas and New Year. I don't know, man. Like, I got nothing else. I did also enjoy, I heard Jesus a couple times, which is just the winner, right, in this, no matter what your word is. Like, my word is peace. My word is joy. Well, my word is Jesus. So your word's great, but my word is better, right? I really enjoy that very much. All the ways we can tell ourselves this year is going to be different. Here's the truth. This year is going to be this year. This year is going to be this year. 4 days, January 4th, is enough to help us remember that it won't be perfect. It will contain some of the same challenges that did not magically disappear for us over Christmas break. When you go back to work tomorrow, you're going to be like, oh man, that's still there. Or they're still there. And maybe you guys are fabulous human beings. I'm sure no one at your office or workplace would think this about you. But there might be some people who are going to look at you and be like, oh man, you're still here too. I'm still here too. Yeah, there are many Christmas miracles, but that tends not to be one of them. We still are going to face the same urgency that human beings face, with a similar feeling maybe that human beings have always faced, that life is getting more and more urgent, but we're just better at communicating it to each other these days with text and social media and all these things. So the urgency is much more in front of our faces to feel like what's happening, like what is happening. I was trying to explain Venezuela to my 8-year-old son yesterday, and I'm a history major whose job on some level is to explain the things. And I was like, on the fly, how do I explain all this to an 8-year-old and make it make sense? And what's going on there right now? What about right now? What about the next second? What about the next second? The world can feel more and more urgent. But what's true also is that this year is going to be unique. It will be not because it's more and more urgent, but because they're always unique. This year will be meaningful in its own way, in its own season, and 2026, indeed, will not come around again. This year is going to be this year. And for all the ways that we think to ourselves, I'm going to get it right this year, some days you will. Some days you will. For all the ways we think to ourselves, I'm going to do all of these spectacular things this year, some days you will. Alex and I are taking our kids to Disney at fall break. We've, in Dave Ramsey fashion, we're paying cash, baby. We've been saving for this for 2 years to go and do. And there is this pressure. Our kids will be 9 and 6 when we go in October. And there's this pressure, like when we talk about it, where we're like, this is it. Like, they get this one and that. So all the Disney magic's got to be in this one thing. And I may have shared this story before. I hate roller coasters. I hate them. I've heard some sympathy sounding noises in there. I appreciate that. When I was a kid, the movie Top Gun came out when I was 5. And my parents rightfully did not let me watch Top Gun when I was 5, but my grandparents did. I had a lot of questions when I saw that movie later in life and understood some things that I didn't understand at 5, or some words that I didn't understand at 5. But what that meant is, on the playground as a kid at Alcoa Elementary School, me and my friends, my buddy Josh Webb and I in particular, used to play Maverick and Goose on the swing set. We traded off who was Goose. Somebody died, a different person died every day on the playground. But when I was in elementary school, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. That's entirely what I wanted to be when I grew up. When my kids asked me about the Hot Wheels I had when I grew up, I didn't have Hot Wheels. I had jets. I had fighter jets and did all that stuff. And then when I was in 5th grade, so all of elementary school, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. And when I was in 5th grade, my parents took me to Dollywood. And this is like early 90s Dollywood. If you are new to town, Dollywood is different than it used to be. In the early 90s, someone posted on social media earlier a map, one of the maps you used to get by hand in Dollywood in the early 90s. Very different place, right? And so my parents were like, you've never been on a roller coaster. You need to go on a roller coaster. This is the Thunder Express. You remember the Thunder Express at Dollywood? I'm not that old, right? Raise your hand if you remember the Thunder Express. Okay, all right, good. So none of the crazy upside down nonsense that they have over there now. This is an old wooden roller coaster that made you fear for your life and safety, which is in part why it's not there anymore. But my parents were like, you're getting on this roller coaster. You've never done it before. Today's the day. And I was like, I don't want to get on this roller coaster. And still to this day, I don't know why it was at that day or that point in time. I understand the parental instinct of like, you're doing this today. Stop asking me questions, right? But for whatever reason, for my parents, that was the day, and we were in a long line, and the fear and the anxiety creeping in of what this ride is going to be like. The thought occurred to me of like, what if I just yell stranger? How could I get out of this? That might be a way I could get out of this. And my parents put me on the Thunder Express, which again is not the upside down, twisty, 100 miles an hour, all that stuff. It was rickety, for sure. And I got off that roller coaster, and my first thought was, I cannot be Maverick. Sorry, it's working out okay for me so far as an adult. But I say all that to say, you ask my wife, who loves roller coasters. This is a real thing for me. And I got to go take 2 children and maybe get on like the 7 Dwarves Mine Train or something like that, which Alex and I did once when we went 9 years ago. More than that, 12 years ago. And you ask her, there might have been some mild post-traumatic stress coming off that roller coaster. So if you're thinking of a word for me for this year, I don't know, whatever that is, guts, courage, overcoming, all those kinds of things. But it's easy to tell ourselves like, oh, that's the thing. Like, it's got to be this. It's got to be magical. It's got to be all of these things. And there's so much pressure. And we can do that to ourselves in our own lives in so many ways when we think everything's got to be spectacular. And these particular things have to be the most spectacular, or we're letting this person down. We're letting our kids down. I'm letting my partner down. I'm letting myself down. I'm letting God down. All kinds of different things like that. It is very easy at the start of a year to think this is going to be different and this needs to be spectacular and all that. And the truth is, this year is going to be this year. But what I do know, one of the great truths of life, is that even in the moment when we are most prone to look for the spectacular, the truth is, in life, most of our moments will be common. We look for all these high point moments, and the reality is we spend most of our time doing very common things. We will drink coffee. We will go to work. We will have imperfect interactions at work. We will come home tired. We will eat, drink, and be merry. We will sleep. We will get sick. We will love. We will lose. And then we'll do it all again tomorrow. If the narrative was every moment of your life must be spectacular and all that, even if we had the energy for that, which we don't, if everything was spectacular, nothing would be. Yeah? There's much we can learn here in this idea of the common, both in the quantity of moments in our lives that are common, but also in the way that God moves in these common ways that help actually give them more quality than we give it credit for. Because remember, back here, we just left here, right? We just left Bethlehem. Back here, Mary and Joseph have this baby in a situation nothing about that situation is what they would have imagined or thought for themselves. Jesus is born into this world in a manger, a stable, and there's going to be all these angels, but in the text, Mary and Joseph don't see them. What we're given of that story is that the angels appear to the shepherds in a very robust kind of way, But the shepherds are out in the fields. There's nothing in the text that specifically points to us saying that Mary and Joseph see all of that. What Mary and Joseph have is a dream that Joseph has dreamed, an interaction Mary has had with an angel, a star, plus or minus however much light that's giving for them, and the hope that they're clinging to. We can't imagine what it's like to be told these things, that you're pregnant even though you haven't been together, and your son, by the way, is going to be the Messiah. And then when Jesus is born, it's impossible for us to even know. What would they have been anticipating? Would they have been anticipating, like, all the ways it shows up on the cartoon movies, that when Jesus is born, all of a sudden there's this, oh, that just comes down? That's not in the text. All these questions that they would have had. The angels show up to the shepherds in the field and tell the shepherds the good news, and then invite them to, as we talked about on Christmas Eve, they invite them to Eureka. They invite them to find. You will find. So the affirmation that Mary and Joseph get in these post-birth moments is less cosmic and more common. Just a group of random shepherds show up at the stable and say, we saw this thing, we heard this thing, we came to Eureka, we came to see it, find it for ourselves, and it's here. And then days or weeks or months, depending on who you believe later, there are some wise men that arrive who come knocking on a door, and they weren't necessarily expecting that either. For Mary and Joseph, even in these moments, even as we've got it set up here with light shining down from the star, one of the truths about these large cosmic moments, not just in Bethlehem but throughout Scripture, is that God consistently provides just enough light to see. God provides just enough light to see. In the Old Testament, there's pillars of cloud and pillars of fire and a parted sea and miracles and all these things. And those guys ask the same questions and doubt the same doubts that you and I do too. The signs we're given are always just enough for faith. A spectacular thing inviting us into something sacred. And the truth is, most of our days are common. But that doesn't mean that behind the scenes, the spectacular is not very much at work. Because while all of this is happening in simplicity in Bethlehem, which is the story that we're told at the beginning in Matthew and Luke, when John begins to tell his story of Jesus, he immediately reminds us of what's happening in the larger context. Here's John 1, starting in verse 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him, not one thing came into being. And what has come into being in him was life, and that life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. Long before that night in Bethlehem, and long before any night, Jesus is there. There from the beginning, there in the beginning, there in the creation of all things, including you and me. In the stillness of Bethlehem, there's just enough light to see. But behind the scenes, he is the light. And this is why we say when we study things like the Nicene Creed and we talk about the importance of believing that God is, or that Jesus is both truly human and fully God. Truly human and fully God. In these truly human lives, it's comforting to remember, especially at the start of a new year, especially when the world seems unpredictable, or especially the first time, if you haven't had it yet, it's coming, where your New Year's resolution or your word where you go, oh, I messed it up. In those moments, it's comforting to remember that in these truly human lives, ours is fully God. Our Jesus, our God, is fully God. And there's something in this Jesus that is this light gives light to all people. This is echoed again in verse 9 of John 1. The true light which enlightens everyone was coming into the world. This verse, there's something about this Jesus that is for everyone. In Methodist language, we would call this prevenient grace. It means that in Jesus, God is reaching out to the whole world. The grace of God present and active in the life of everyone, everywhere, trying to draw them in to Christ. This is the light of the world. So no matter how common or whatever your word or your resolution or whatever your success or failure rate is, or whatever pressure you're feeling, any of those things, there's a good reminder here that most of our lives are common, and in these lives, God often provides just enough light to see. But behind it all, He is the light. And behind it all, He is working in spectacular ways that we can't even fully imagine. So the church, every year at the start of the year, we come together and we do two things. We celebrate communion on the first Sunday of the year, a reminder of our need for grace and our common union. And then next week, we will remember our baptism together. We start the year with these two sacraments, communion and baptism, as a way to ground ourselves in something common that is also something spectacular. And then from there, the story of the church is this story of leaning into the light, the rhythm, as it was, that takes us from Bethlehem into the stories of adult Jesus. Find Jesus right away teaching in such a fashion that makes people go, oh, I hadn't heard it that way before. I hadn't seen it. I hadn't thought about that. I didn't put that together. He's the revelation of God, the Word made flesh, God incarnate. And right away, Jesus enlightens all of us. He does this in Matthew in a teaching we call the Sermon on the Mount right away. We'll start a series on that 2 weeks from today on January 18th as we're leaning into these epiphany, eureka kinds of moments. But don't forget, at the beginning, as always in any year, whether it's at Advent or at the resurrection or at any point, it's always God who makes the first move in our stories. It's Jesus who shines the light for all people. And our job, our verb in the story, the first verb for the people in John 1 and verse 12, but to all who received him, who believed in his name, he gave power to become children of God. New year, same invitation. Believe it. Receive and believe, as we might say in church world. God is doing all these things before us, behind us, all these large cosmic things we may never understand this side of heaven. And often shines in our lives and our hearts just enough light to see, to believe. And the invitation for us from the beginning, at the beginning, is to do just that. To believe that this God is not just going to show up in the spectacular, he's going to show up in the common too, because that's where most of our life is. And when this story moves from Bethlehem to Jerusalem this spring, what is happening behind the scenes will again be cosmic. The light of the world giving himself on a cross, another truth that is open to all who believe. And in that most cosmic of moments, what does he do? He does a very common thing. This bread, this juice, this covenant, a common thing done meaningfully. I bet you get it right some this year. I bet you do. And man, I hope you get some spectacular. I hope I get on that roller coaster. I bet you get it right some. But here's what I know. I know most of your moments will be common. I know you'll need grace. And I know it's here. And it's in these moments just enough light to see that God invites us to find him there. Go to lunch, go to work, go to school, do the laundry, love well, forgive well, learn well, and do it all again tomorrow. And it's in all that, the sacred and the spectacular, the cosmic and the common, believe that your word, your resolution, your success and failure rate, believe that all of it is covered by the grace of God, who invites us to meet him in Jesus in every moment with just enough light to see and to believe that he is always working before and behind in love.